from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. I am Reverend Charles Harrison, and on this episode, we will be talking about the death of Tyre Nichols in Memphis, Tennessee, and the 5 former Memphis police officers who have been charged with that death, and really the implications of that death, not just in Memphis, but nationwide. Stay tuned. Hello, this is Reverend Charles Harrison, and thank you so much for joining me today on Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison. Today, I want to get into kind of what's going on in Memphis, Tennessee. I think that really today my heart is broken. I've been watching on the news lately, what's going on in Memphis with the death of a 29-year-old Tyre Nichols. Heard his mother on TV last night, and that just really broke my heart as a pastor, in the work that I do, not just as a pastor of a church, but the work I do also in the community with the Indianapolis 10-Point Coalition. And I have been to so many homicide scenes and funerals and talked to so many mothers and fathers about the death of their child. And it is always heartbreaking to me, and brings so much sadness. And, I think I'm just really heartbroken by this Tyre Nichols death and, really troubled by what seems to be a case that has been built against 5 former Memphis police officers who happen to be black. Here's an incident where a young man who's 29 years old, he's black, and he's accused of being beaten basically to death by 5 black former police officers. And as a black male, certainly I am very troubled by that. Let's look at the case a little bit. So apparently, several days ago, Tyre Nichols was stopped in a traffic stop. Apparently from the officers, this was a suspicion of reckless driving. The current Memphis police chief, when she reviewed the tapes, it didn't seem like in her mind that Mr. Nichols was driving recklessly, but he was stopped by police. There was some kind of altercation. He takes off running. We don't know at this point why. It hasn't been certainly revealed yet as to why he took off running. Call goes in that Mr. Nichols is running from police. They eventually catch up with him. There is a second, what seems to be altercation, which then leads to 3 minutes of the beating of Mr. Nichols, according to law enforcement who have seen the tape. The 5 police officers at the time, after an investigation, was later fired by the Memphis Police Department. And several days ago, they were charged with 5 counts. The counts are, 1, they were all charged with second-degree murder. The second charge was 2 counts of official misconduct. The third charge was 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping. The fourth charge was 1 count of official oppression. And then the 5th charge was 1 count of aggravated assault. These were the charges against the 5 former Memphis police officers. They were arrested. As of this broadcast, I think 4 of the 5 are now out on bail. For most of you know, in my commentary and narrative today about this incident, for those who are in the Indianapolis area, you know I am a strong supporter of law enforcement. I go on to say that, you know, for the last 30 years, I have been a volunteer chaplain for the state police here in Indiana. So, you know, I'm kind of on the other side. I'm on the side prior to me becoming a state police officer, you know, on the side of most African Americans who are concerned about police and how we have been treated by police and our interactions with police. But when I became a chaplain, I certainly got a chance to be on the other side. When I first joined the state police as a chaplain, I used to ride a lot. I would ride at least once and sometimes twice a week with state troopers. So, you know, there were hundreds and hundreds over probably a 7-year span when I would ride almost every week. I was a part of hundreds of traffic stops, and I know how a traffic stop is made. I've seen the conduct of not just troopers, but other police officers from other police departments, because sometimes we would back up an officer from another department, you know, here in Marion County. So I had a chance to see. I understand the dangers of it. There were times when I was out with law enforcement that someone was resisting, particularly if there was a warrant out for their arrest. And I've seen how it was handled. I think in all of my years, there may have been one time as I was sitting in the seat on the passenger side that I probably became a little concerned about what I was seeing as far as the safety of the officers, who at that time it was just one officer and several individuals he was trying to you know, detain. But by and large, you know, I had a chance to witness a lot of the professionalism by officers from a lot of different police departments. But certainly, you know, I'm not naive, and I've had my own incidences with law enforcement over the years, and sometimes it hadn't been pleasant, you know, and I understand the fears, their anxieties, the mistrust, the concern that many in the black community have, you know, when it comes to law enforcement. And because I have been on the other side, I probably don't really understand what I, you know, from what I have gathered, the excessive use of force by these 5 former police officers, you know, in Memphis for a traffic stop. You know, I'm trying to, you know, understand what would have led them to using such excessive force that Mr. Nichols was hospitalized and then later died a few days later from the incident. That's what really troubles me about this. You know, when I have been out with law enforcement and there was a traffic stop and someone may have been resisting, may have fled. Certainly there were other officers who came on the scene, and they normally would detain the person and do it in a way that was not physically harmful to themselves nor to the person who was being arrested. I don't understand how 5 individuals are having such a difficult time with one individual, Mr. Nichols, that it will lead to them having to use such excessive force that it led to his death. I know in this country we don't try people in public, that all 5 of these officers, you know, have a right to defend themselves in the court of law, which is what they're going to be able to do. But certainly this is concerning to me. And what really concerns me is that several years ago in this country, it was a very difficult time for America after the incident in Minnesota with George Floyd and his death, and watching that video of, the arrest of George Floyd and ultimately the criminal misconduct of all those officers involved that led to George Floyd's death. Not only, did we deal with the George Floyd, incident in Minnesota, but in Louisville, Kentucky with the Breonna Taylor incident. And there were several others around that time which led to protests, not just all over America, but led to protests all over the world. It led to the whole movement of Black Lives Matter, in this country, as they demanded an end to police brutality, police misconduct, and reimagining how policing should take place in communities of color. Now, I didn't go all the way with that. I supported the calls for, for justice for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and others. I just felt like that at that time we were lumping a lot of good police officers, in the same basket with the bad police officers, and I felt like we needed to focus on the bad. But certainly this incident with Mr. Nichols, Tyre Nichols, is not helping the cause at all. For those of us, in the Black community who are trying to work with law enforcement and the community to try to bridge the gap between Black America and law enforcement, I certainly feel like this hurts the cause. This hurts the cause in building a trust, building a relationship where the Black community feels like law enforcement is fulfilling what they constitutionally have sworn to do, which is serve and protect. Black America doesn't always feel like police officers when it comes to us are serving and protecting. And even though, I am a part of the law enforcement family, I think there are legitimate concerns in that area. And certainly this situation with Mr. Nichols and his tragic death, and it is a tragic death. I know that the video is going to be shown tonight at about 7 o'clock, and certainly I'm concerned about that, and I get to that a little later. But certainly when we continually have these kind of incidences with law enforcement, that tends to lead to the death of unarmed Black Americans, particularly male, but not always, is concerning. It's concerning, and that is something that certainly cannot be tolerated, that we have a traffic stop that tragically leads to the death of a 29-year-old male. And that is concerning, that is troubling, and we have to fix this problem in this country. I don't know why officers would even go that far today with all the technology today, and everybody has a camera, and then you're wearing body cameras. So what you are doing is certainly going to be caught on tape, and why would you take it that far? I just think that we cannot continue to have in this country these kind of incidences where a traffic stop, an arrest is being made because someone, has done something criminal. In the arrest of them leads to them dying. It doesn't make sense. And what is really troubling is disproportionately that tends to happen more to Black Americans. I know there are times when there are incidences between, police officers and those who may be white in this country, and something may go tragically wrong and it may lead to their death. I understand that. But disproportionately, Black Americans are being impacted at a greater level when you look at our population in this country, and that is troubling, and it goes back a long way. We're not talking about something that has just happened. We're talking about something that goes really all the way back to slavery, when police were being formed, in the South to try to find runaway slaves and how they were treated in this country. And I think Tyre Nichols' case it certainly conjures up, the George Floyds and the Breonna Taylors, and the Michael Browns. And I know all of those incidences are different, but for black people, in this country, black Americans, it fits a pattern, and here we are. And then when you have leaders like myself who are pro-police, I'm pro-police, but I'm not pro-bad police. I'm not supportive of officers who misuse their authority as police officers, who violate the laws of our land, who commit criminal activities in uniform, when you swore to serve and protect. And you swore to serve and protect not just some Americans, but all Americans in this country, regardless of their gender, regardless of the color of their skin, that as a police officer, you are the first line of defense for citizens in this country, that we will be protected from bad people and bad things happening, because the police in this country are sworn to uphold the law, not break the law, but uphold the law and serve and protect all citizens in this country. Now, I'm concerned. I'm concerned that what happened to Tyre Nichols may lead to not just protest, because I think people do have the right to protest. When there is an injustice, people have a right to protest. People have a right to protest so that the police that serve in their city are fulfilling their constitutional duties and are serving and protecting all residents of this country. So people have a right to march. People have a right to protest. They have a right to march and protest tonight about what happened to Tyre Nichols. He should not be dead, but he's dead. I think there's some satisfaction from my perspective, and I think for some in the community, that those 5 officers have been arrested and charged, and now the residents of Memphis get a chance to hear all the evidence and be the judges of whether these officers are guilty or innocent. But I'm happy that at least they have been charged. What I am concerned about tonight is that for those of us who want justice, who want to see fairness and equality, who want to put an end to police brutality and police misconduct and police overusing the power that they have, those are legitimate concerns that you have. But those concerns should not tonight lead to any kind of violence. There should be no rioting. There should be no burning of cars, of buildings. It ought to be done peacefully. Whatever city tonight you're going to protest in about the killing of Tyre Nichols, it ought to be done in a peaceful way. Let your voices be heard, but let your voices be heard in a peaceful way. I stand with you. Leaders across this country stand with those who will be protesting so that this madness will end. We cannot continually have individuals who may or may not have broken the law, but if they did break the law, it should not end in their death on the street at the hands of law enforcement. That should not happen. Unless they are doing something that jeopardizes the safety of those officers or someone in the public, The process of them being detained and arrested should not lead to people's death. That's unacceptable. We cannot continue to tolerate that in this country. And I'm pro-police, but we cannot have police officers wearing that uniform that violates the Constitution that they swore to serve and protect. They cannot do that. You cannot violate your oath to serve and protect all citizens in the city in which you're a police officer in. Regardless of what you think about that citizen, your job is not to be the judge. Your job is not to be the executioner. Your job is to make the arrest, to take them to jail, and allow our judicial process then to play itself out. I don't care how mad that young man may have made those officers in the fact that he fled, and we don't know why he fled. He may have fled because he was fearful of what was going to happen to him. He may have fled out of concern. But if he fled for some other reason, it should not have led to his death. And that's the concern. The concern is that this continues to happen in 2023. It should not still be happening today. We expect better. I'm expecting better from the residents in Memphis and cities all across the country. If we decide to protest tonight in March in memory of Tyre Nichols and for the cause of equal justice and fairness and protection by law enforcement, let's do it in a peaceful way. Don't allow individuals to come into these protests tonight who have one objective, and that is to create havoc and chaos. They are not reflective of the cause. We cannot damage the cause, and we cannot burn down businesses in our community because then we are affected. We have too many other struggles, particularly in many low-income communities. We certainly shouldn't let people come in and riot and burn down businesses in our community when in a lot of cases it's so hard to get them in there in the first place, particularly quality businesses. We have a responsibility. We have a responsibility, regardless of what those 5 police officers did in Memphis, Tennessee. We have a responsibility to our community. We owe it to Tyre. His mother said it, for us not to dishonor his name by protesting in a violent way or rioting in these cities. It's not going to bring Tyre back, but what we can do is make sure those who are responsible for his death get justice, are held accountable for their actions. We can see that. We can make sure Tyre gets justice and those who perpetrated this are held accountable. I believe those videotapes are going to show that those officers violated their oath of office to serve and protect. And I believe that the citizens of Memphis are going to do the right thing based on the evidence. But we must do the right thing in Indianapolis and Atlanta, in cities all across the country. We must do the right thing. We must protest, but we must do it peacefully. And to law enforcement, continue to work to get these bad cops out of police departments. I know many of you are frustrated too. But as a supporter of law enforcement, I say to you, this cannot continually happen. Some of these officers are probably showing signs of this kind of behavior prior to it leading to someone unfortunately being killed. It has to be addressed before it gets to this point where someone is killed and then we have a national outcry or outcry in that city where it happened. I know there's a lot of good police officers out there. And I want you to stand with us as we stand with you to make sure that everyone that puts on that uniform and wears that badge will be faithful to the oath that they take to preserve this Constitution and to serve and protect all the residents in that city or police jurisdiction where they patrol and serve. It's going to take all of us to make this nation better. But we cannot continue to have Tyre Nichols, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd's, and others in this country continue to die at the hands of police officers unarmed, when at the worst that should have happened, they should have been handcuffed and taken to jail. That should have been the worst of what happened, and allowed the judges and the prosecutors then to determine how they were going to be held accountable for the crime that they committed. They should not be dying on our streets and in the custody of law enforcement. Law enforcement should not just bust in someone's house and open up fire and shoot an innocent person. That is unacceptable and something that we cannot tolerate. We cannot tolerate. Moderate leaders like myself who are willing to work for the good of our city and to bridge the gap between law enforcement and communities of color. I cannot stand with you if you don't address the problems of these bad officers who are in these departments who are making you look bad too. And I'm so happy that in Memphis, the police chief and other officers and those on the state and federal level came together and quickly condemned what those 5 police officers did. That's what we need to see nationwide. That's what we need to see in cities nationwide, that officers who wear that uniform and badge, who give of themselves daily to protect us. We know that you're making a great sacrifice. We know that you do a lot so that me and my family and residents of these cities can live in a safe city and knowing that there's someone that has sworn to protect and to serve us. But you got to help get rid of these bad cops and see to it that when they violate their oath, when they break the law, that they too are held accountable, like we are held accountable as regular citizens when we break the law. This is a great opportunity for us, America, not to handle the Tyre Nichols situation like we did Breonna Taylor and like we did George Floyd, where there was some violence. I believe Dr. King was right when he said, only light can drive out evil, and only love can drive out hate. We can make a difference in this country. We can end this injustice by some who put on that uniform. But it's going to take all of us. It's going to take law enforcement. It's going to take those of us in the community to use this situation, as tragic as it is, to make this a better nation and to bring equality, fairness, and justice to our judicial system in this country, and to ensure that those who put on that badge and take that oath are committed to serving and protecting all of us who are Americans. Thank you so much for joining me today on my commentary about the tragic death of Tyre Nichols. And I hope that all of you who are listening to this will use this as an opportunity to get involved and do your part so that we make our cities, our states, and our nations, and our nation a better place for all Americans, regardless of your gender, your sexual preference, or the color of your skin. I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, and I would like to thank you for joining me today on Real Talk. Join me next time as I bring more real talk about the real issues that affect our communities here in Indianapolis and across the country. And also be sure to subscribe to this podcast and share it on Facebook and Twitter. This is Reverend Charles Harrison, and I pray that you have a blessed and awesome day.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.